It's like people forget that over the course of the Biden administration, there were cop cities popping up all over the country. And everyone was quiet then because the liberal president was doing it. Now you have the conservative president who's executing those efforts, and now they're up in arms. And when you see the actions that took place in Minneapolis, you realize that there are a lot of people who freely accept an authoritarian or even a totalitarian state. Everyone wonders, how do we get here? How does this become the norm? How do people just capitulate to this type of a system? Well, because unfortunately, Ben Franklin was correct many, many years ago. Those that will give up security for liberty deserve neither. And there are way too many comfortable Americans today that will give up liberty for security. That's how they perceive it. And they also don't question how broken this economic and political system is because it hasn't completely engulfed them yet. I cannot for the life of me understand just how selfish and self-centered our culture really is. It's beyond brazen. Now, I'm going to read to you a statement that was made. I'm not going to tell you who wrote it until afterwards. But I will tell you that the person who did write it is a conservative. And here's what this person had to say. The Minnesota shooting, Venezuela, Gaza, it's all connected. A woman got shot in the face. Yes. Yesterday's Minnesota ICE shooting, the video is violent, bloody, and tough to watch. Please click only if you think it can, and if you can handle it. Is providing plenty of material for conservatives to score political points. The victim shouldn't have blocked the road with her car. Hundreds of hysterical protesters launched into their typical routines last night, and liberal leaders like Jacob Frey, who immediately declared it's time for ICE to get the F out of Minneapolis, are predictably behaving like children. That's all true, but it should be secondary to the tragedy of Renee Nicole Good losing her life. The 37-year-old was an American citizen and reportedly the mother of a kindergarten-aged child. Did we disagree with her viewpoints on immigration? Probably. But that shouldn't matter. Her death is a tragedy, regardless of her partisan affiliations, ideological beliefs, or who pulled the trigger. A woman got shot in the face. Colin? Colin? How come so few conservatives are viewing this story through a human lens? And why, when something similar like the killing of Charlie Kirk happens on the other side, did on the left celebrate because they thought his political positions were wrong? We have a guess. Violence around the world is desensitizing Americans to violence at home. Think about what just happened in Venezuela. Donald Trump's backers are celebrating Nicolas Maduro's abduction as a victory for justice, freedom, and American prosperity, while his opponents fear it was a manufactured act of nation-building globalism detrimental to our national interests. This piece's purpose is not to weigh in on the debate, but it's worth acknowledging what neither side seems bothered to mention: the attack's death toll. According to U.S. officials, the operation ended 75 lives. Venezuela says the number is even higher. Did you know that? Is anyone in Washington or the media talking about it? It doesn't matter how anti-Maduro you are. The deaths of the human beings in his country, even if they were his paid protesters, or paid protectors, were tragic. Just like Good's killing should be seen as a horror show, even from a right-wing perspective. Those people lost their futures. Then, of course, there's Gaza. Americans have grown so accustomed to tales of the IDF's US-backed barbarities that we've reached a state of numbness. The fact that Israel has reportedly slaughtered over 400 Palestinians since agreeing to its ceasefire doesn't even register as news. Our tax dollars continues to fund the Israelis' mass killings, making the shooting of just one little old woman in Minnesota seem entirely inconspicuous, but it isn't. And I will also say, it's been a lot more than 400 people that were slaughtered in Gaza since the ceasefire. If the U.S. were in a better place, everyone, regardless of their politics, would pause when something like the Minneapolis, oh, excuse me, you moved too fast. The same goes for Russia. We get it. Permanent Washington thinks Putin is a very bad man, but that doesn't mean we should cheerlead as untold numbers of his citizens get their limbs blown off in frozen European battlefields. Violence is grotesque, and it is always grotesque, even if you earnestly believe that certain displays of it advance a greater good. Two things can be true at once. If the U.S. were in a better place, everyone, regardless of their politics, would pause when something like the Minneapolis shooting happens and at least recognize the human tragedy. But that doesn't happen because compared to the countless overseas killings our government routinely brings about, Good's death doesn't seem like such a big deal. She's just another headline. How can this situation improve? Americans must stop normalizing bloodshed. That means pulling the plug on funding ethnic cleansing, viewing war as the last option rather than the first, and please, for the love of God, no more Lindsey Graham frothing over the titillating excitement of killing people. A step back and a deep breath would make our country and world a more humane place. This is the person who wrote that piece.
Announced that he is hiking the Pentagon budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. Just announced that. Why? Well, it's hard to know without asking him. He'll explain. But big picture, obviously, that's the kind of budget that a country that anticipates a global or regional war has for its military. There's no.
So for those of you who are not up to snuff and why I've said from the beginning of this stream that the shooting in Minneapolis is a distraction from much bigger things happening right now, this is one of them. Did you know that Trump is attempting to push the next military budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion? What do you think that's for? You think that these contractors need to get paid more money because the money's shooting out of their ears as we speak? Or is it entirely possible that we're being preempted for war with Iran, or maybe China, or maybe more money for Gaza for Israel to complete its ethnic cleanse and mass murder? Maybe they need more money for Ukraine. But all I know is that the powers that be have gotten so drunk with power that they now like rubbing it in our face. Literally, rubbing it in our face. Telling us, here, would you like another? And if you don't, too fucking bad, because you're not going to do anything about it. Think about that number. Pretty nuts. 1.5 trillion with a T, and we're totally going to get it because people can't stay focused. But this is why, despite what some people feel about Tucker showing up at Trump's meeting the other day and giving a little slow clap to him, no, sometimes you need people like that in the room. And even if he's full of shit, even if Mr. Fishback, who's running for governor of Florida, is full of shit, you know what I know for a fact? If people with platforms are saying what needs to be said, then eventually the populace is going to catch on and they're going to go with it, even if the people that are running are not going to as well. I don't trust Tucker like I don't trust anybody, but I can respect him and appreciate what he's saying. And what Tucker has been saying and will continue to say, I can appreciate. And you can think he's an op, you can think whatever you want. I think he's intelligence. His father was intelligence. But clearly, something has happened to him over the past several years where he feels the need to be on the side of the populace. He is being a class traitor in so many respects. And if nothing else, we can tip our hat to that.
No other reason to do that. That's not a peacekeeping budget. That's a war budget, a big war budget. So I think it's fair to expect, and all the signs suggest, that we're going to have a big war soon. a big war soon. I think everyone expects that to happen. Hope it doesn't happen, but obviously we're moving in that direction, toward a world war. Sorry. So how do you position yourself for that? Well, you look at a map and you ask the most basic questions. What areas do I want to control? Where are the trade routes? Who's got the resources? Who do I share a language with? Who do I share a common history with? Who do I share a civilization with? And you proceed on that basis, and you try and shore up your team, the allies, against the other team, the Axis or whatever. But you think soberly about how the world is going to cleave once this begins. And if you were to do that for about, I don't know, 25 or 30 seconds, you would arrive at the most obvious conclusion of all, which is the United States has to have a relationship with Russia in order to survive anything like that. And the reason is really simple: scale and resources. Russia is the largest country in the world. It has the most resources in the world. That means energy, oil and gas. It means all kinds of minerals. It means gold. And in a world where the US dollar is probably not going to be as powerful as it once was, already declining in value, massive incentive for other countries to get off the dollar to trade in energy in other currencies. You need to think about gold. And people are thinking about gold. And by the way, if you are wondering whether volatility is coming up, look at silver prices, look at gold prices over the last year. Investors understand this is a new time. You need to be aligned with Russia. And the number one thing you can't do, Donald Trump has said this many times over the years, is allow Russia and China to become a bloc, because if you do, then you are facing off against the majority of the world's population, the biggest population bloc in the world, the biggest landmass in the world, and the biggest economy in the world.
When Trump won his first term, and he did win in 2016, they could not accept that he won, and they had to come up with an excuse. So what did they do? They saber-rattled Russia to such a degree for so long that over the course of the past decade, an organization known as BRICS started taking shape. And when we have always discussed the three most powerful nations on earth, us, China, and Russia, never is there a moment, seemingly, where there is an alignment with two against one. But now, it certainly looks like Russia and China are aligning, not just themselves, but with India, South Africa, Brazil, and many others. You know how we went into Venezuela and tried to steal their oil? Well, guess what? Brazil does more international trade with China than they do with us. And they're in our hemisphere. They're very close to us. So when we say we are being run by a lawless rogue oligarchy at the top, they don't care about us. They don't care about what happens to the average citizen in this country. They don't care that our dollar is worth shit. They don't care that we don't have living wages or ability to save money anymore, or a healthcare system that has any value, or they're pillaging the hell out of our environment. These are the real issues. And all the while, we want to pretend that somehow American exceptionalism is still a thing. And I see it all the time. All the time. There is a consensus amongst the population that is still asleep. There's a consensus among people in the population that think Trump's doing a great job. Not that he's an abject failure, but that he's doing a great job. And that he's not a cuck for Israel. It's all a means to an end. Okay. Hopefully, if you're here, you understand how significant this circumstance that Tucker is talking about right now is having on the greater picture.
If you combine those two. So you can't do that. And it's pretty clear that the last administration intentionally drove Russia into an alliance with China, which they now have. Just to be really clear, just to bottom line it, if Donald Trump wants to commit one act as president that will secure him a place in history forever as a hero, it would be to bring Russia back into alliance with the United States. Oh, Russia's bad. Right. Kind of hard to say that after Venezuela. And it's tiresome anyway. No, Russia is not bad or good. Russia is essential to the United States. We cannot survive a global conflict if Russia and China are aligned against us. Period. And it couldn't be more simple, and it shouldn't be very hard at this point to make that deal.
We have watched in real time over this past decade how Russia and China have been drawn together. Whether it was the Democrats saber rattling Russia or the Republicans saber rattling China, it's still all interconnected. We are run by a government that hates its citizens, hates them, despises them, doesn't want them thinking, wants them working basically as rats in a lab, conveyor belt, if you will. And even if things are bad in other parts of the world, what good does that serve us? If we're so great, if America is so damn great, and you want to look elsewhere and see what else, what I know for sure is that this can still be a great nation, but it refuses to get out of its own way. And we are an easily manipulated and propagandized culture. We seldom are able to put our differences aside on critical issues. And this is a real test right here with what's going on in Minneapolis and Venezuela. It's all connected. Just as Tucker said, we can be a great nation. Doesn't mean we are. We're far from it. We're actually pretty shitty. But we know what it takes. We know what is needed. But the powers that be don't want it. And as our country continues to get driven into the seventh circle of hell with a complete burden of epic proportions when it comes to our debt and deficit, devaluing of our currency, complete lack of value in our properties, everything. It's all going to hell. All of it. How we respond is the key. If we deal with the Zio state, that's going to be a huge part of it because it's interconnected to the banking system, of which we have no control right now. But that doesn't mean we can't get it back. And as I said, the only way that this is going to happen, the only way, is if we disassemble the Zio state, if we disassemble the systemic control that Zionism has over this country. That seems to be a pretty unifying issue. Most people agree that they don't want to adhere to the will of the state of Israel anymore. Great. Everything that's happening is interrelated to that. ICE agents are trained by Israel. You like having Israel here in our country, policing our communities? I don't. And I doubt Tucker or anybody else with half a brain would either, no matter how partisan they may be.
There's no reason to pay any attention to the unelected leader of Ukraine. Now, the obstacle in the way is not geostrategic. There is no argument for continuing a proxy war, which is what it is. United States versus Russia. We've been at war for 4 years. All of us are pretending we're not. We are. There's no reason to continue that on the basis of America's national interest. That is not in our interest, and it never has been in our interest. And by the way, Russia is a Christian country, a remarkable country, a very serious country. that we have a lot in common with, whether you like it or not. Oh, he's bad. Okay, stop. We need Russia. And the only reason we are not in alliance with Russia is because the foreign policy establishment in the United States, the weapons manufacturers, and particularly the neocons, believe that they somehow own Russia or want to retake Russia or something, and Putin is in the way. He kicked out the oligarchs. That was gravely offensive to the American finance establishment and to the American foreign policy establishment, and acted on his own country's behalf. Whatever. None of that even matters at this point. Ignore these people. He has to be our enemy? No. If Putin is our enemy, if Russia is our enemy, we cannot survive a global conflict. Sorry.
And I agree. And that's where we're heading. We're heading for a global conflict, a third world war, if you will. And what is it going to take for the American people to say enough is enough? We're not going down this road. When do we say we are not a war economy anymore? It's going to take a hell of a drop. But I wonder if things are so bad and the people in charge are making it so much worse, why is it so difficult for the average citizen to recognize that it will only be their demise that's coming as a result? No one is going to be saved by this system. And it is unfortunate that a lot of people are content with this idea that, well, if I live in the right part of town, like in the Hunger Games, I'll be okay. The rest of them, that's their bad luck. Either we are the United States of America or we're not.